The number most riders see when they buy a motorcycle is not the number that matters. The number that actually defines what that bike cost you, the one dealers never put on a window sticker, is what you will have paid 5 years from now. Today, I am going to break down every real cost of motorcycle ownership across a full 5-year period. Not the optimistic version. Not the if everything goes perfectly version. The honest, line-by-line version based on actual repair data, insurance industry reports, depreciation studies, and real owners talking about what they actually spent. I'm going to walk you through 6 cost categories. Then I'm going to build 3 real rider scenarios and show you what 5 years actually costs. Because the final number changes how you should think about every motorcycle purchase you ever make. Let's start where most people think the story ends, the sticker price. New motorcycles in this country currently range from about $5,000 for an entry-level bike up past $35,000 for a fully loaded tourer. Most mainstream mid-range bikes, like your Yamaha MT-09s, your Honda CB750 Hornets, and your Kawasaki Z900s, land somewhere between $10,000 and $16,000. And riders look at that number and feel like they have done the math. They have not done the math. Here's what that purchase price does not include. It does not include the interest you will pay if you finance it. It does not include the value you will never recover when you eventually sell it. It does not include a single oil change, a single set of tires, or a single insurance premium. Those are separate bills. And over 5 years, they add up to more than the bike itself. But before we get to all of that, let's talk about the cost most riders never see coming, because it starts the day they ride off the lot. Now, if you are financing, and most riders are, there is an additional cost you need to factor in right now. Current motorcycle loan rates are running between roughly 5 and 10.5% APR, depending on your credit and your lender. Credit unions are generally on the lower end. Dealer financing is often on the higher end. On a $13,000 bike with 10% down and a 60-month loan at 7.5% APR, you will pay approximately $1,800 in interest alone over the life of that loan. That is $1,800 you spent on nothing, except the privilege of not paying cash. That is not a controversial statement. It is what the math says. This is the one. This is the number that changes everything. Depreciation is the money you lose, not because something breaks, not because you crashed it, not because you neglected it. You lose it simply because time passes and you own a motorcycle instead of cash. Here's what the data says. Motorcycle. Habit analyzed the 30 best-selling motorcycles in the United States over a 10-year period. The average motorcycle in that study lost between 15 and 25% of its value in the first year alone. After that, it loses another 5 to 10% per year in years 2 through 5. Do that math on a $13,000 bike. In year 1, you could lose up to $3,200, just sitting there. By year 5, you are looking at having lost somewhere between 35 and 50% of what you paid. On a $13,000 bike, that is $4,500 to $6,500 gone. Not spent on repairs, not spent on tires, just gone. Because the market says your bike is worth less than it was. Now, it is not equal across all bikes, and this is important. Sport bikes are the worst. Cycle Trader, MotorcycleHabit, and multiple KBB cross-references all point to the same pattern. Sport bikes can lose 20 to 40% in year 1. The reason is simple. Manufacturers update them constantly. The moment a new model year drops, your current bike gets cheaper. That is just how sport bike culture works. Cruisers, especially Harley-Davidson, depreciate more slowly. A Street Glide loses roughly $5,000, or about 20%, over the first 2 to 4 years, according to market value analyses I dug into for this video. That sounds bad, but compared to a sport bike, it is actually holding up relatively well. Adventure bikes and touring bikes hold value reasonably well too, because they attract buyers who actually use them. and because strong community demand keeps prices stable. But here's what I want you to hear clearly. No motorcycle is an investment. Every one of them depreciates. The question is not whether you will lose money. The question is how much, and whether you factored that into your purchase decision. Most riders do not factor it in at all. That is the mistake. Insurance is the cost most riders actually do think about, but they almost always underestimate it because they are looking at the best case number. The national average for full coverage motorcycle insurance in 2024 was approximately $396 to $399 per year. That comes from MoneyGeek's analysis of progressive quotes across all 50 states, and it is consistent with data from the Harley-Davidson insurance resource as well. Sounds reasonable, right? $33 a month? Here's what that number represents. A 40-year-old rider with a clean record, an average bike, and moderate coverage. That is not you if you are under 25. That is not you if you ride a sport bike. That is not you if you live in Louisiana or Arizona. A younger rider on a sport bike in a high-rate state can pay dramatically more. Full coverage on a performance bike can approach $329 per month in some profiles. That is nearly $4,000 a year. Over 5 years, that is close to $20,000 in insurance alone. For the average full coverage rider, the realistic 5-year insurance total lands somewhere around $2,000. For a young rider on a sport bike, that number can be $3,000 to $8,000 or more. One comparison worth making, the NAIC, the National Association of Insurance Commissioners, puts the national average for personal auto insurance at around $1,800 per year. Motorcycle insurance, for most riders, is significantly less than car insurance. That is true. But it is not free, and it adds up faster than most people project. If you are finding this useful, hit subscribe. I break down motorcycle ownership honestly, what bikes actually cost, what actually breaks, and what the dealers are not going to tell you every week. This is where the number gets real for a lot of riders. Maintenance is not one bill. It is a dozen different bills spread across 5 years, and the total depends almost entirely on two things: what bike you bought and whether you can turn a wrench. Let me give you the actual numbers. An oil change at a shop runs $75 to $150. That needs to happen every 3,000 to 7,000 miles, depending on your bike and what oil you run. A set of mid-range street tires installed runs $300 to $600. Performance or ADV tires can push $600 to $1,000 or more installed. Here's something most new riders do not think about. Motorcycle tires wear out much faster than car tires. A dedicated sport rear tire, the sticky, soft compound kind, can be done in as little as 2,000 to 5,000 miles, depending on how hard you ride. A sport touring compound on the same bike will last significantly longer. If you are riding hard and riding often on the aggressive rubber, you could be buying rear tires twice a year. A chain and sprocket set installed at a shop runs $180 to $550. Brake pads, all corners, run $100 to $250. And then there is the valve adjustment, which many bikes require every 15,000 to 30,000 miles. That service alone runs $200 to $800 at a shop. On some European bikes, it is more. J.D. Power's motorcycle service data puts annual maintenance for an average rider covering 5,000 to 10,000 miles per year at between $500 and $2,500 annually. That is a wide range, and the reason is the variable I just mentioned. If you take your bike to the dealer for everything, you are paying $120 to $200 an hour for labor. An independent shop charges $80 to $120. If you do your own oil changes, your own chain maintenance, and your own brake pads, MotoVault's analysis found that DIY riders cut their maintenance costs by 40 to 60% compared to riders who use dealer service for everything. I saw a forum thread recently where a rider paid $492 for a break-in service on a small single-cylinder Yamaha. That is one service on an inexpensive bike. The community's response was fairly direct. Learn to do it yourself. Over 5 years, a dealer-dependent rider on a mid-size bike is realistically looking at $5,000 to $12,500 in maintenance. A DIY rider on the same bike, same miles, might spend $1,500 to $3,000. Same bike, completely different outcome based on one variable. Fuel is the cost that actually does tend to be cheap on motorcycles. Most street bikes average 40 to 60 miles per gallon. At 3,500 miles per year and $3.50 a gallon, you are looking at roughly $245 in fuel annually. That is about $1,200 over 5 years. But I want to flag something here that matters for the whole cost picture. The Bureau of Transportation Statistics ran a study using actual odometer readings, not surveys, not self-reporting, from motorcycles in North Carolina, Virginia, and Hawaii. It is a 3-state study, not a national census, but it is consistent with data from the Motorcycle Industry Council and other sources. The mean annual mileage per registered motorcycle came out to approximately 2,000 miles per year. Not 5,000, not 6,000, which riders tend to estimate when asked. 2,000, a separate motorcycle safety foundation. Naturalistic study found that 73% of riders actually rode less in the following year than they reported riding in the previous year. Most bikes sit more than their owners admit, and the less you ride, the worse every other number in this video gets on a cost per mile basis. Gear is a one-time cost that most riders underestimate, and it is a recurring cost that almost nobody budgets for. A full entry-level kit, meaning helmet, jacket, gloves, boots, and pants, runs $500 to $1,500 new. That is based on data from multiple retailers including RevZilla, Altus Motorsports, and Riders Share. Here is what most people forget. Helmet manufacturers like Arai and Shuai recommend replacing your helmet every 5 years from first use and immediately after any impact, regardless of visible damage. So your helmet budget is not a one-time line item. It recurs. Over 5 years, budget at least $200 to $500 for gear replacement on top of your initial kit. And gear is non-negotiable from a safety standpoint. In 2023, according to NHTSA data, motorcyclists were dying at roughly 28 times the rate of passenger car occupants per mile traveled. Your gear is not optional. Budget for it like it is not optional. Now let me put all of this together. I want to walk you through 3 realistic rider scenarios, and I want to be very clear. These are estimates built from sourced ranges, not guarantees. Your actual numbers will depend on your bike, your state, your riding habits, and whether you wrench on your own machine. Scenario A, the budget rider. Used mid-size Japanese bike purchased for $6,000 cash. Do-it-yourself maintenance. Minimum coverage insurance. 3,000 miles a year. Depreciation loss over 5 years, around $1,500 to $2,500. Insurance, $700 to $1,000. Maintenance, do it yourself, $1,500 to $2,500. Fuel, $950. Gear, $700 to $1,200. Estimated 5-year total, roughly $5,400 to $8,150. On a $6,000 bike, keep that in mind. Scenario B, the average new bike buyer financed. New $13,000 bike, 10% down, 60 months at 7.5% annual percentage rate. Full coverage insurance, shop service, 5,000 miles a year. Loan principal plus interest, about $14,800. Depreciation loss, $4,500 to $6,500. Insurance, $2,000. Maintenance at the shop, $5,000 to $8,000. Fuel, $1,750. Gear, $1,000 to $1,500. Estimated 5-year total, somewhere between $19,000 and $24,500 on a $13,000 motorcycle. Scenario C, the premium or high mileage rider. New adventure or touring bike, $18,000 to $22,000, financed, dealer service, 8,000 miles a year. Estimated 5-year total, $28,500 to $45,000 or more. That is the number nobody shows you at the dealership. So what do you actually do with this information? First, buy used if you are cost conscious. The sharpest depreciation happens in the first 2 years. Let someone else absorb that hit, then buy the bike from them. Second, learn basic maintenance. An oil change, chain care, brake pads. MotoVault's data shows that single decision cuts your annual maintenance cost by 40 to 60%. Over 5 years, that is potentially thousands of dollars. Third, match your bike to how you actually ride, not how you plan to ride. The Department of Transportation odometer data says the average registered motorcycle covers 2,000 miles a year. If that is you, a $13,000 bike with dealer service has a very unflattering cost per mile number. The sticker price is the least important number on the motorcycle. Depreciation is the number that changes everything. Know that number before you buy, and you will make a completely different decision. Subscribe. I break down what motorcycles actually cost, what actually breaks, and what the industry does not tell you. Every single week, you know where to find me.